So Tony Parker is going to start this video off. We're mainly talking about buyout players, dudes whose teams might not be that great, but the player themselves is still alright enough to where they could be bought out by maybe the 50th or 60th game of the year or whatever. Some better team picks them up and then they can be in the postseason or whatever. First one we're going to look at, I mentioned already, Tony Parker. We don't know how good Charlotte's really going to be. I mean, I think he will help them out a lot because whenever they've had a decent backup point guard, they've been able to get to around 45 wins or so. But they have also had some problems the past few years, so if the Hornets are disappointing, then I could see them giving Tony his money, and then he hits the open market, and I don't actually know which team he would end up on at that point. The other four names here, I'm going to give at least one team that I could picture them ending up on, but I really couldn't picture one for Tony just because like everybody kind of has a backup point guard, at least all the good teams do, so it could be a potential logjam, but if it was a team that like wasn't a contender, then you know, it could be quite a few teams, but I'm mainly thinking of like the top teams for these guys. Next is Trevor Ariza, the Phoenix Suns. I think they did a good thing with this pickup because it helps them out right now because he's going to give the spacing for DeAndre Ayton post-ups and pick and rolls and Devin Booker to do whatever the hell he wants. He'll be a leader in the locker room and all that, and then he'll also help defensively for these guys like Josh Jackson and TJ Warren, if you believe TJ Warren can be a defensive player and all that. And Ariza can just do all that for them, but then they could trade him, you know, mid-season, like at the trade deadline and get something for him, or they could just buy him out, which, I mean, they wouldn't really get anything for that, but it would just be a nice thing to do with given that he has 1 year left. So I think there's a decent chance that Ariza's on a different team by the time this season ends, and the team I could picture is the team that he's been on for the past couple of seasons, that being the Houston Rockets. I don't know, I'm pretty sure he was not number 18, but I didn't feel like adjusting his number. Yeah, I mean, Houston's got the money, and especially if it's after a buyout and they could go for it. And hell, even in a trade, they saved like $4 or $5 million from the Ryan Anderson deal, so yeah, Ariza could be back in Houston. We're going to go back to the Phoenix Suns with Tyson Chandler. I remember when they signed him, I brought up the idea that they could have signed Tyson Chandler. I think when I did that, I didn't picture them signing him to the amount of money that it ended up being, or maybe I don't know, maybe I just really disagree with my previous opinion, but looking back on it now, was it a little weird for them to commit to Tyson Chandler that hard? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, they'd never really found another guy at the center position until right now with Ayton, so I guess this is the right time for Chandler's contract to be running out, even if they didn't plan on it being that way when they initially signed him to the deal, right? But even so, while his defense is not what it used to be, it's still pretty okay, and his rebounding is good, and in a reduced role, I think he could help out a team like the Lakers. I talked not long ago about how the Lakers need to make a move at center, get themselves some more size, and I think Chandler would be perfect because he could come in right now and actually help you win. But, you know, you're not going to play him like high minutes, and I don't think he expects to play like very high minutes either. So I think that one could make some sense. Taj Gibson is also a big man. I talked about Taj like a week ago or something, but when you have a guy who's as fundamentally sound and as tough and plays as hard as Taj does, who the hell doesn't like talking about that kind of a guy, right? Making about $14 million for the T-Wolves, and who knows how good the Timberwolves are going to be this season. We got the Jimmy Butler rumors, and the rumored deal is Josh Richardson and Bam Adebayo, which those are pretty good players, I would say, to where maybe the T-Wolves wouldn't fall off a cliff, although losing Jimmy Butler would still be pretty big for them. But regardless, I think there's a chance that Taj could be a change in teams here. Via a buyout, via a trade is also a possibility. And the guy's good. He has done a good job of just aging pretty all right. I think he can play the power forward or center position. And when I start looking at teams who could use some more physical big guys, I think of one team in the Eastern Conference, that team being the Milwaukee Bucks. They do have some bigs. I mean, they got Brook Lopez and John Henson, but picture Taj just playing all the minutes that John Henson used to play. Doesn't that sound pretty good? Then you could have a good contrast at the backup 5 where, well, I guess the 5 in general, I don't know who would start, probably Lopez. Him and Taj could be a pretty good, set of guys to throw out there. And then finally, DeMarre Carroll, who looked really old and really slow with the Raptors, but now he has looked like an NBA player again. He actually can move. He can actually do a little bit of stuff off the dribble. He's not just a stationary 3-and-D player. And speaking of that defense, it was way better in Brooklyn because he can actually move side to side now, where for the Raptors, he was just plagued by injuries that seemed to last for the entire 2 years that he was there. So the dude can jump higher, he can run faster, he can move side to side, he can go off the dribble and do stuff. And he's still a pretty smart veteran who can step right into any situation and fit in and not have to score a whole bunch of points, and he can still make you a better team. He's a wing player, so why not send him to the team that already has a million other wing players, aka my favorite team, the Boston Celtics. I think Semi Ojeleye is going to play a decent amount of minutes for them, and while Ojele's defense is there, his offense is not. So Carroll could just be like a 15 to 20 minute per game guy to just be a better player at that spot. That's an idea. So the Celtics can have 1,000,001 small forwards. And we have a podcast in the description. Talked about even more free agents in 2019, getting into the real nitty gritty with like the 40th best free agents and stuff. Star is Born, watched that, and also talked about Logic's new Young Sinatra thing.